It's around 4:25. You have about 10 minutes to sunset. There's just a small sliver of yellow just on the horizon. Not sure if the camera picks it up that well, but it's there amongst the gray. Hopefully the camera picks up on the sound of my voice well enough and doesn't pick up so much of the noise pollution from leaf blowers. There is something of interest to talk about today. As I was doing a little bit of internet searches and reading a little bit, as is my normal activity during much of the day, I came to think about how we reason, how much emphasis we actually place on that in making decisions. Philosophers like to think that the best way to come about knowledge is to reason about it. And although that may be a good approach to take, maybe perhaps the best approach to take to gain knowledge, it can be argued that the general population is not interested in this. That's been a theme of many of my videos recently, and I can expand upon that. If we take the position of David Hume, we can more fully appreciate that perhaps the general population, instead of operating on reason, operates on what he calls passions, or what I'll call emotions. Many of the political positions that are taken out of an emotional connection. Many people that hold a political position will reach that position from a place of strong emotion, and then use reason as a way to work backwards and justify their position. If you are going to use reason as a way to know about the world, you cannot use it in this backtracking manner. If you are truly interested in gaining knowledge about the world, then reason cannot be approached in this way. This is an abuse of our reasoning ability. The fact that a strong case can be made that politics is not based on reason shows that by and large, people do not use reason as the backbone go-to when making decisions. And this is quite distressing, to me at least. Emotions are so temporal. They're so subject to the winds of time. They can change in a flash. And normal people may not be in a position to appreciate this. But anyone who suffers from a mental health condition, whether diagnosed or undiagnosed, will understand that emotions are fleeting. They can come and go just like that. So to have a whole political system which is largely run off of people's passions, emotions, that's a very dangerous thing. And you could say, well, how do we know that the general public operates on feelings and emotions and not a sense of reason? I would say that if the general public operated on a true sense of reason, then politics would not be as it is today. In the United States, at least. Voters would not elect people who were so under the gun of their emotions. A great example of this is the MAGA movement within the Republican Party. And that whole segment operates on abnormal emotion and then pretends like that governing strategy is anywhere close to effective. If the general population operated on true logic and reasoning, the MAGA movement would not exist. Those people would come nowhere close to the seats of power within the United States government. This leads to a more troubling idea, and that is the idea that maybe the prospect of reasoning as a way of ascertaining knowledge as a whole is too idealized. Meaning, it's nice to think that that is a way that knowledge is gained, but maybe, for all practical terms, it is not. There is evidence that supports this view. If we look at the role of education, specifically higher education, the goal there largely is to teach a body of knowledge. But underpinning that is the teachings of critical thought. Now, it takes a lot of training in critical thought to be able to reason properly, to be able to properly articulate or demonstrate a cause and an effect. Now, it's a good thing that education and higher education can teach us how to reason in this way. As the squirrel climbs up that tree. The other side of it now, so it's out of view. But one can argue that the fact that reasoning ability has to be gained largely through the studies of higher education. There's the squirrel. Shows that reasoning is not the primary method humans use to ascertain knowledge. You cannot have a system that is so hard to learn, that is so hard to employ, and then say that that system is the most accurate representation of knowledge gathering. I assure you, if you think that, then you are missing something. Because a huge percentage of this population is not capable of rational thought. There must be other ways of gaining knowledge that are separate from rational thought. I think perhaps the best way to explain knowledge is through an empirical method rather than a rational method. If we say that the most common way of gaining knowledge is through experience, then I believe we have stumbled upon what the essence of knowledge actually is. I believe human nature shows that knowledge is primarily not gained through rational thought, but rather is gained through people's experience of trial and error. A lot of the world cannot be rationalized. There are many complexities which make this impossible. If we look at anything deeply enough, we can see that there are many exceptions to everything. In fact, if you take organic chemistry, you'll find that you do learn about the general rules of things, but when it comes test day, you're only tested on the exemptions to those rules. I believe if rational thought was the way humans primarily gain knowledge, then the scientific method, which is based on empiricism, would not be so fruitful. You see, empiricism can be applied to both politics and to the scientific disciplines. However, when empiricism is applied to science, it is done in a respectful way, which advances the field and helps society. When empiricism is applied to politics, you get what you currently see around us. A bunch of lunatics who have been trained through experience that the best way to, quote, govern is through grabbing media attention. Somewhere along the line, experience led people to believe that it was okay to no longer care about the functioning of civil society. Hopefully, science will not suffer a similar fate, because then all the hard work of previous generations would be lost. And the technological society we currently have, which allows stupid politicians to coast, as our life in this society is not so bad right now, would surely crumble as time passes. Experience is definitely flawed. And I think I just highlighted how. If we get too comfortable in our experiences, we can pervert our sense of knowledge. Now, I believe that we are always in the process of gaining knowledge about our society. However, the knowledge we are currently gaining is not a pretty representation of humankind. I believe that perhaps the rationalists of the past had a sense for a more beautiful world. A sense that, as the squirrel's back, a sense that everything should have an essence of beauty. And if you take this view, then rationalism makes a lot of sense. It is very attractive. However, my current view of society is not one of attractiveness. It is one of disappointment. As we get a shot of the moon. I think people have a false perception of what knowledge is. Knowledge is not something on the top of a mountain where you increasingly gain a greater perspective for the beauty of the world. There's nothing in knowledge that is inherently beautiful. If you say you're interested in gaining knowledge, then you cannot turn a blind eye to all the bad things that you're currently surrounded by. You are a hostage to the time in which you live. I believe there is a comprehensive view of knowledge that takes account of the good and bad of human nature. However, I believe a search for an idyllic truth is only a nice fantasy. Even if we take, for example, something that is flatly wrong and say there is no knowledge to be gained there, I believe this is wrong. I believe that even in bad times, where people have a disdain for knowledge, just in appreciating that view for how poisonous it is, we can say that we have gained a better sense for what knowledge is, or at least appreciate that true knowledge allows us to be in a position where we can dispel false claims, however prevalent they may be. In what I would argue is a decaying society that is coasting on the backs of a select few intelligent people, and with that, that will be the end.